things that have nothing to do with the failure we've just seen have disconnected people from each other, and not just in sort of a vague way. The fact that many things downstream of birth control and technological aspects of dating and changes in the mores surrounding sex and romance have caused people not to prioritize the finding of a mate.
See, I had to come back around to this, what you're saying. I agree with you. Yeah. But I had to come back around to it because after my divorce from, when I got out of prison, my marriage broke up.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of it is what normally happens to a guy that's heartbroken or how much of it was my fault, but there was a journey I had to make to get back to this point. And sorry to interrupt you, but I wholeheartedly agree with you on this point, actually. And people don't realize the value of it.
The value is almost indescribable. Yeah. And I know that, as much as I have placed a value on this since I was very young, I didn't understand the full value until I saw what they did to us during COVID. Right? Because
so you've also recently had a reinforcement of this for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I had an intuitive sense of how important this was, and it had been important in my life in many different ways. Yeah. However, what I didn't understand was that the chances that you were going to hang on to your sanity if you and your partner were watching the same movie, right? I don't care how many people swear that you've lost your mind. If somebody that you know well can sit down and look you in the eye and say, you know what? I don't know what they're talking about, but I see it too, right? What you're saying is not crazy. Here's the part I don't agree with, right? They'll tell you what they don't agree with, but the reality check being a primary feature of your life was one of the things that made it possible to not be sucked into this intense gravitational well that was set up by the mainstream narrative. And it really couldn't have been more important. And what's more, I don't know whether you've had this experience. Among the most common things that people say to me, and this has not been years, this has been 6 months. Among the most common things that people say to me when they stop me on the street is, keep going, you are keeping me sane. Yeah. And I will say something like, thank you very much, that means a lot to me. And they'll say, no, you're not getting it. You're keeping me sane, right? There are people who are watching us, who are being told an entirely fictional story. And then to hear, I think it amounts to this, somebody who is decent and clearly not trying to mislead them, smart enough to sort through things and ready to say out loud what they think is a very rare phenomenon. And so I think the point is, you could probably predict how likely somebody is to have not been drawn into the nonsense just based on the quality of the reality checks in their life. Almost nobody who didn't have a good reality check.
So I'm going to pull you up on this then. Let's test it, yeah? So you and I both remember each other through these last 2 years.
Yes.
And we exchanged texts and we were like encouraging and listen, we're here for each other. And I appreciate you came on my show before I was let go of. When you were doing your ivermectin stuff, I was keen to support that.
Yep.
And it was for that reason I got you on, but also retweeting your comments on it and stuff. So we remember those days, yeah? But let's go before and after those days. So would you have predicted before that all happened that I would have been the one in the UK speaking to you about this stuff?
No.
Right, so how does that marry with what you just said?
Well,
because I know most people wouldn't have predicted this.
Look, first of all, there are some things about you that are different. And I'm a huge believer that the most underrated phenomenon from the point of view of understanding adults is childhood, right? Developmental experience is everything. And I don't mean childhood like, really young, but I mean what you've been through shapes what you are capable of seeing, what you're willing to endure.
Yeah, we spoke about this on the way up, right?
Yeah. You have been through incredible hardship. And you have been through incredible hardship and you've come out the other side. And frankly, I think it builds a strength of character that just doesn't exist in most of the people that we would hope would have it. And so what I really think is that many of the COVID narratives were covered in a layer of sophistry. That was supposed to keep you away. And the sophistry wasn't good enough on its own to do it, but the sophistry coupled with...
So you're saying experience gives you a bullshit detector?
Well, in your case, I think what it did is it gave you courage. And the point is, most people actively broke their own understanding. You couldn't drag them to the truth because they instinctively knew that if they saw the truth, it was going to, unleash a world of hell for them. And so the point, and frankly, they weren't wrong.
You're saying there's a psychological barrier there?
I'm saying that you and I both know that there was nothing fun about having whatever it is that was distributing that awful narrative target you.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And so the point is, okay, it was awful, but what choice do I have is something most people don't say to themselves. What they do is they find reasons not to be saying the kinds of things that make that happen. And so I think, what you went through gave you room that others couldn't find.
Yeah, but then to pick up further, because we got sort of, when we even raised this on the way up before we sat down, this is what I said. I said to you, fine, you may have learned the alphabet first, but once I say to you, okay, look, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then I'm showing it to you, what's precluding somebody at that stage learning the alphabet with you? Is that the psychological barrier that
I
exists?
really think it's fear. I really think it's fear. Yeah, and
it's fear that, so it's intellectual capability and fear. How related are they? Because I think they're more related than most people realize.
Well, here's what I've seen. In academia, before any of this COVID stuff happened, I was already, for obvious reasons, quite disappointed with the academy. And basically, I concluded a couple things. One, we are in an epidemic of cowardice, right? The amount of cowardice is incredible, right? Things people used to endure regularly, people are just completely unwilling to face. But the second thing is academia selects for it, right? If you have a mentality where, you want to be in the ivory tower and you don't want to get your hands dirty, right? And you like, jousting in that particular, gentlemanly way, then the academy might be where you land. And what that means is that when the academy falls apart, when the academy forgets how to think, right, the number of people who will stand up and say, sorry, I'm not going along with that, is tiny, right? And we saw this at Evergreen, which was 5 years ago yesterday, Evergreen melted down. 5 years ago yesterday, May 23rd.
So Rachel told me that on the way to see you guys in Bath, and she was like, do remember it's 5 years, because Heather apparently wrote about it and said she's going offline for a bit.
Yeah.
Because Rachel follows Heather's Substack, I should say, for the record.
Right, everybody should follow Heather's Substack.
Yeah. Hi, Heather.
But the point is, the pattern at Evergreen was very clear, right? Some people in a crisis will disappoint you, right? We saw that a bunch with people we had called friends, with all of our colleagues, with a couple of exceptions, right? Literally, the entire faculty failed the assignment. And then we saw people do the other thing. We saw people we didn't know had incredible courage who stood up and, said the truth. And it was really important. But the distinction, the fact that the people who surprised us in the pleasant direction weren't on the faculty was very conspicuous. Yeah. And I think it's about a failure. The academy attracts people who are, frankly, risk averse, and it makes them a hazard.